Hey there folks, how you doing today? Welcome back to the channel. Please bear with any background racket that you might hear throughout this production. We are on location where life happens. Sometimes there's stuff going on out there that interferes with what we're trying to do in here. Also, it's late September. It's finally started to cool down a little bit, but I still have a fan going in the background because it's very humid today. It's been raining all morning, and you may hear that in the background, so just bear with the noise. Folks, this is part 2 of our series on the new Point YC9 YEET Cannon. If you didn't see part 1, look for this thumbnail. I'll put a link to it down in the description of this video. It's germane to the subject. You should watch that before you watch this portion of the video, especially if you're thinking about getting one of these Point YC9 pistols. Before we go any further, I'd like to give a shout out to my buddy Kelly Steele over at Gunman66. He sent me this cool t-shirt. If you're not familiar with his channel, I encourage you to go over and check it out. I'll put a link to that down below as well. So, as I mentioned early in the first video, this is going to be a series on this pistol. I knew I wasn't going to be able to cover everything in just one video. Before we go any further, as I always like to do, folks, this is a safe and empty weapon. There's no ammunition out here on the table that will fit in this weapon. I do have a 12 gauge shorty shell there, propping it up so you can see it while I talk about it. So what is the Point YC9 or the YEET Cannon? Point for years has made these single stack blowback operated pistols. They make them in a multitude of common calibers. Probably the most common one would be the Point C9, which was a single stack 9mm with some crude ergonomics. Over the course of the past couple of years, Point has worked on addressing some of the concerns with the ergonomics, making their pistols a little more user-friendly, allowing people to do some of the stuff that they want to do with their pistol. That all kind of came to a culmination with the YEET Cannon, which has been a long time in process. The biggest, most noticeable difference between the YC9 and the old C9 is now you have a 1.5-stack magazine, which affords a couple of extra rounds to be held within the grip of a standard length magazine. So the Point YC9 holds 10 rounds in the magazine as opposed to, I think, 8 in the magazine of the C9. I think it's 8. It might be 7, but regardless, you get a couple extra rounds with the YC9, as well as some better looking ergonomics, if you can call it that. So we did our first video and it was riddled with disappointment. The YC9 could barely choke through a magazine without having some kind of malfunction. The most common malfunction that we observed the first time we had this pistol out were the rounds nosediving in the magazine. I was under the impression that perhaps the magazine was the issue because it seemed like the rounds kind of wanted to nosedive a little bit just loading it up. So I reached out to Point. I told them what I was doing with the pistol, and I told them what my thoughts were. Because I was reviewing the pistol publicly, they asked me to send the entire package back to them so they could go through it. I sent the pistol back to Point using the label they sent me, paying to have the label printed, paying to have the worksheet for repair printed, paying to buy a roll of tape so that I could take it inside the FedEx store because it had to be sealed up in a box and I couldn't bring it in there and use their tape. It cost me about $8 to get it sent to them, but they footed the bill for the return shipping and they sent it back to me. So I would wager to say that probably the shipment for repair was probably close to half of what the value of the pistol is. But regardless, I sent it back to the folks at Point so they could go through it and take a look at it. They had it for a couple of weeks and they replaced a laundry list of parts on this pistol. To include ejector keys, slide retainer, firing pin springs, mag catch, barrel, mainspring. Says they shot 4 magazines through it and they accuracy tested it. For those of you that were there for the initial portion of this video, you'll know that The rounds on target were considerably high. I think it was at 10 yards, might have been at 7 yards. I don't remember. You'd have to go back and watch it. But regardless, it was hitting high, and I had the sights bottomed out on the pistol. So Hi-Point replaced all those parts on it. They sent a verification target back with it. I will get you a close-up of that so you can see it. It's a very nice group. Printed ever so slightly high at 10 yards. The shooter that tested that did a real good job on it. I don't know if it was from a bench or freehand, but regardless, they knew what they were doing. It was literally one jagged hole in the target. So I was excited to get the YC9 back over to the range. From the first portion, you'll know that I tested a variety of ammunition through the Hi-Point. When I took it back the second time, I tested a variety of ammunition through the Hi-Point. I purchased from SG Ammo. I'm going to leave it there so YouTube doesn't shut this down. The following ammunition. I purchased a box of Winchester White Box, a box of Remington UMC, a box of Soleil Below, and a box of MagTech ammunition to test through this pistol, as well as I tested some Federal Hydra shocks that we tried through it the first time we headed out. Ammunition is not cheap. This was all self-funded and an expensive venture in testing the Hi-Point again to see if it was going to be reliable. So what did we find at the range? I think that was shooter caused.
I mean, that squid, that green squid with the squiddy legs, man, he looks freaking nasty.
All right, top, right, MagTech. So I am happy to report that after the second trip to the range with the YC9 YEET Cannon, the results were a little better than they were the first time. They were not perfect, however, but that comes with a very big caveat. I will go into greater detail on that here in a minute. I don't know if you can see it here on this target. Side note, this is a target from BakerTargets.com. Baker Targets does not sponsor this channel. They will not even return an email that I sent to them. This target was provided to the channel by a loyal viewer out in Georgia. Tony, thank you for sending the targets out to us. Sending targets to the channel is a good way to support us in what we do here if you're looking for a way to help us out. Over here, we have Winchester White Box. You'll notice that while the group, this was at 10 yards freehand, was a little high, it is a very good group. It's about half the size of my fist. About 2 inches. I'll take that all day long. Also, we didn't have any malfunctions while shooting with the Winchester White Box. Over here, we had the MagTech 115 grain. The group opened up a little bit, but it's very well centered. Still smaller than my hand. Not a bad group, especially considering the horrible trigger on the YC9. Down here in the middle, we have the Soleil Below, and I kind of pulled that one a little bit. That was just me. I've got 3 of them almost touching, and then one over on that side. But again, not a bad sized group. Down here on this side, we have the Remington UMC group. Now, you might notice some little 22 caliber holes down there at the bottom. I have ranted in the past about other people shooting my targets at the range. Well, those rounds were put on there by my little girl, and I don't tell her no to anything. So, I'm kidding about that. I do tell her no all the time, but she asked if she could shoot it. I told her, sure, why not? These 5 rounds over here were Federal Hydra shocks, and whatever was wrong with the sights the first time out, Hi-Point corrected them. I appreciate them for fixing that for me. All of the groups were fairly good. Accuracy was about as good as I would expect to get out of a pistol of this type, style, variety, caliber, if you will. The only issues that we had with the pistol this time out were the result of, if you look right here, and I'll show you a close-up of it, whoever reassembled my pistol at High Point put the magazine release on the side for a left-hand shooter to manipulate with their thumb. I am a right-handed shooter, and as such, by gripping the pistol the way I normally do, I'll show you a close-up of this, you'll see that my middle finger is resting against that magazine release. I did not realize this because I didn't really have it out of the box until I got to the range, and my bad, I forgot to take any tools out there with me. So I didn't have anything with me to reverse that button while I was shooting the pistol the second time out. Blame it on my ignorance. I probably could have gotten the button out. I didn't realize how easy it is to swap it around. I'm not going to show you here on the YouTube video how to do that, but for the folks watching on Rumble, so for the YouTube viewers, you'll see that I have it switched around. It literally only took me a few seconds to do that, and I managed to do it without any tools. I just used my fingers. It would be easier with a tool. I didn't realize how easy it was to change it out. That is my bad. That is on me. For future reference, it's not that hard to change it. If I would have had the magazine release reversed like it is now, when I took it out the second time, I don't think I would have had any of the malfunctions that I observed the second time that we had it out. What was happening was, out of a little over 200 rounds, 3 times, we kind of had a short feed, or you know, the round started to go into the chamber, but the bolt closed on it too fast and it didn't catch the case head. And every time that that occurred, I noticed that the magazine had popped loose. And I believe that was just my finger pushing on the button because the magazine release was on the wrong side for a right-handed shooter. It was easy to correct. I wish I would have known how to correct it while I was out there, and I don't think we would have observed those. That being said, there was one instance in those couple hundred rounds that we had the pistol out there where there was just a jam. It misfed, and the magazine wasn't the issue. And I went back and I looked at the tape, and it wasn't an issue of the pistol being limp-wristed or popping back or anything. It just failed to feed one time. So I'm not sure what happened there, but I will say that it was better than it was the first time we had it out by leaps and bounds. So now, what are our thoughts on the YC9 after we've headed back to the range the second time? Certainly, I would say that it performed much better than it did the first time we headed out there. That comes with the caveat of we had to send this pistol back to the manufacturer, and they changed a bunch of parts on it in order to make that happen. Was this a quality control issue with the initial production? Was it? I don't know. I just don't know. I know they probably spent a little extra time going through this one simply because they knew you people were going to be seeing it on this platform. I would venture to say that probably anybody that has an issue with their YC9, if you send it back to them, they're going to try to make good on it. Their customer service seemed to be real good. Because I continued to have malfunctions with it the second time I took it out, and because I believe those malfunctions were shooter created by my finger hitting the magazine release, I will give the High Point one more chance here on this platform to perform at a later date. That being said, I've got a ton of money wrapped up in this project already. When you consider $260 plus for the pistol, well over $100 in ammunition, $50 in range fees, you know, we're quickly approaching a $500 investment on a $200 gun for the sake of public review. So I will take it back out one more time, but it's not going to be real in depth. So Now that you've seen part 2 of the series, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. There's one viewer in particular that purchased one of these early on that he's been back and forth with me in the comments section on the other video. I know he had issues with his as well. He sent it back to High Point and he should be getting it back any day. I think his name is Larry. If I missed your name, I'm sorry about that. I'd like to hear how yours worked out as well. Just know that compared to what we were dealing with the first time we headed out, it was much better this time. So thanks for watching. Take care. God bless.